Hey everyone, it's Simon Hurley from Inklips. Welcome to another video. Now, I've been working with alcohol inks ever since I first got into card making, and every once in a while I like to pull them back out and try a new technique with them. So today I'm going to show you how to create a colored overlay over a stamped image to get some really simple but kind of blotchy and fun coloring on the image, and I'm also going to show you a bunch of masking techniques at the end of the video. So I'm starting off by showing you this first card with the little fish tank overlay, which is a little bit more simple to ease into the technique, and later on I'll have a more intricate one which takes a little bit longer and has lots of masking involved. So I'm starting off by stamping down all the images that I want to use onto my cardstock, including this big fish tank, and then I'll stamp the sentiments, and later on I'll add the fish inside as well. Now with this, I'm using the Fantastic Friends stamp set, which is an oldie, but it's great for this technique, and it's got some awesome images in it. Then I've taken a piece of stamp packaging or acetate and laid it right over top of the image and kind of really roughly traced it around, leaving a little bit of a border, and then I'm going to go in with some fussy cutting scissors and just cut right around the image, again leaving just a little bit of a border and not being too perfect around the edges, and I think it looks awesome like that, but if you want it more perfect, you can clean up your cutting and clean up the edges as well to make it look awesome. So then after I'm done with that, I'm going to go onto the alcohol inks. Now with this, I'm using a couple different shades of blue, and usually you want to use some felt and the applicator tool, but I couldn't really find mine, so I'm just using a little sponge here and it worked just as well. I applied little puddles of each color, and I'm going to start dabbing it down onto my work surface here then. The more you dab, the more it blends into the surface, and it'll also give you these little bubbly textures, which I just love. And you can also take the ink straight from the bottle and kind of shake it onto there to get some big splotches of color. And you can keep adding color and kind of dabbing onto your cardstock until you find you love the result of it. And you could also use alcohol or blending solution to make it a little bit lighter. To cover the alcohol ink, because it's a little bit sticky to the touch, I'm just using some packing tape here, which is nice and clear, and I'm going to cut right around that, once again just following the same lines of the acetate that we had, and this will just cover everything and seal it in to make sure no alcohol ink will rub off or be sticky onto your hands when you're touching the card. After all of that is complete, I'm going to move on to coloring the fish tank here. I'm just doing some really quick coloring and a little bit of shading as well, because this will be a little bit visible through the acetate, so I'm coloring in the sand with some darker sand colors here, and it will end up just a little bit lighter after the acetate's over top of it. And this is a little extra here, but I'm just coloring the fish tank in on the sides. You don't see this lighter gray too much, but I thought you would when I was coloring it, so I just added this little portion in as well as some shading. After everything's all colored and shaded in, I'm going to add some adhesive or tape runner right onto the back of the little alcohol ink piece that we created here. And I find you don't see it too much, but you could add it to the darker parts, or you could add adhesive behind the whole thing with some stick it, and you wouldn't see that too well either. And then I'm just going to stick it down right on top of the fish tank, and you can see it goes outside the lines a little bit, but I love how that looks. Next, I've stamped a bunch of little images from the same stamp set in some copic friendly ink, and I'm going to use some copic sketch markers to color and blend these in. Just really quick shading here. I'm doing two-tone colors, and I'm just going to blend them right into the center. So here I'm using red and orange, and I'm going to move on to some blues and greens in the other fish as well. Now with these, if you don't find that they blend too well, or if your colors are too far apart, you could use the tip-to-tip technique and just touch the tip of one marker to the other to make sure they blend right in the center where you want them to. However, I found pretty good results with this, and I loved how they all turned out. Then I've cut out all the images with a little bit of a white border, and you could use the coordinating dies to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to pop these little guys up on some foam tape and put them right inside that little fish tank, which I think looks awesome with them popped up. Then I'm just going to use some tape runner onto the back of the panel. I've cut it down just a bit so it fits nicely onto an A2 size top folding teal card base, and I'm just going to add it with a little bit of a border around the bottom and the sides. Moving on to the next card, this one is just a little bit more difficult with all those masked balloons, and also lots of alcohol ink in this one as well. So I'm starting off by stamping down the sentiment that just cracks me up from the Irreverent Birthday set from Hero Arts that says age is just a number but yours is getting really high, and then I'm stamping down a dog from the Wolf stamp set from Hero Arts as well. All these sets kind of coordinate together and have the same line weight, so I find that they work pretty well together as well. Then there's a little balloon from the Irreverent Birthday stamp set, which I'm stamping down onto vellum. Now I wouldn't recommend actually using vellum for this, but I'm going to be creating masks, and I'll show you why it doesn't work out too well with the vellum a little bit later, but I'm just going to stamp a bunch of little balloons down so we can cut them out and use them as masks for later on in the card. So then I'm just going to quickly fussy cut out this little balloon right around the border, right around the edge, and I'm going to cut off that little bottom part there and just cut around the little oval so that this is all masked out and we can use these little masks for the balloons when we're stamping. So basically we're going to be creating a scene where all these balloons are lifting the little doggy up as a play off the sentiment. So I'm going to start off by stamping the first balloon that I want to show up first and not be overlapped by any other balloons. I put down a mask on that one and I'm stamping the two next to it, which will be back behind it. When you're masking anything off, you want the first thing that you want to show up to be in the foreground, so you stamp it first, and then you mask that off and stamp whatever you want to be in the background. Now I've added a little bit of removable adhesive on the back of my vellum masks, and I'll keep moving these around as I want them, and when you have the mask down, nothing will get stamped on top of that, so it works really well when you're masking off all of these balloons. Now, vellum doesn't work too well because whenever I pick it up, it gets on my finger, and I'm working on a piece of white cardstock, so there was a little bit of fingerprints and it got a little messy later on, but I would recommend just using regular masking paper or a little thin piece of cardstock you can add some removable adhesive behind. That will at least sink the ink into, because right now the vellum, the ink just sits on top, so I had to move to using a little tweezers to pick up the little masks and move them around the card. So I'm going to continue stamping the scene, once again moving the masks where I don't want any ink to get on the balloon, and that works really well with this whole masked scene. It didn't take too long. You just have to have strategy and have enough little masks to cover up all the little balloons as you're stamping them down onto your scene. So I pulled off all the masks, and I'm starting off by drawing some balloon strings here. So I'm just going to attach the balloon strings to the ones in front and then make a bunch of little lines from the ones that'll be coming in the back. And I'm using a thin little pen here. It doesn't exactly match the line weight, but I wanted them to be thinner since they're little strings. And I'm going to wrap that around the dog and add a little bow right in front there. And then I'm using a piece of acetate like I did earlier, or stamp packaging like I said, and I'm going to go around it with a little marker. This time I'm being a little bit more careful because it's a little bit more of a detailed shape, but I'm still going to leave a little bit of a border around the image. And then I'm moving on to my alcohol inks here. So I'm using a different sponge with some blue, yellow, and red onto it, and I'm going to just add one little drop of each color of these, a little puddle, and then I'm going to move on to my acetate here. You can barely see it, but I'm going to move the sponge around so you don't get the same pattern going and start dabbing it right around into the color. Now you'll see the more you dab, the more it does blend, and I wanted these to be super vibrant, deep colors, so I keep adding more ink. I added one drop at a time then, and I'm just going to dab once for each little color and move on to the red here, and you'll see kind of the color just start to spread and create fun little patterns in the ink. It's kind of uncontrollable, and you get some fun and different results each time. Then I'm moving on into the yellow because I wanted some brighter color in there, and you can keep dabbing until you really like it. And if you want it to be lighter, you can add some blending solution or alcohol to kind of lighten the whole background up. Then I'm adding some pieces of packing tape over top of it. Like I said, this just seals everything in because it is a little bit sticky to the touch afterwards when I'm using it on acetate. And then I'm going to go around with a scissors and just fussy cut all that little tape off, and make sure you just follow the acetate lines that you had earlier and be sure not to cut into anything. So then after I've done that, I'm adding some adhesive onto the back. This one's pretty dark, so it's nice to have that adhesive and it doesn't really show. And then I'm adding it onto the balloons there, and you can see the balloon lines through, which I think is just awesome. But I love the color overlay over top of it, and it's a super easy way to add color to this, but still make them look like balloons because it has that reflective kind of acetate to it. So then I'm going to use some colored pencils and just color in this little dog to look like mine. It has little black and white spots on it, and it also has a little bit of brown on its mustache, so I colored all this in. And I don't really like to blend it out using any Gamsol or anything like that. I like it to be kind of the rough texture that colored pencils are, and it adds a little bit of a fur texture to it as well. So I'm just going in with some really light shading here, and you can kind of build everything up. You don't want to push too hard to break the pencil tip, and you also don't want to build up the wax layer to make it too much, and then you won't be able to blend anymore. So I'm just blending these two little colors on, and then I'm going to move on to the brown, and I'm just using one color, starting off a little bit darker and moving it on to the lighter, and then I'm pretty much done. So I've taken that little panel, cut down the sides, added it onto a darker blue kind of top folding A2 size card base, and I'm going to push that down and add it onto the card. Here are the finished off cards. I just love this technique with the alcohol ink overlay, and I hope you guys will grab out your alcohol inks for this technique. It's super fun, and I think it creates some really cool colored texture on your cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I loved creating it. If you did, please leave it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on screen with my little face icon there. And there's more videos to watch if you like the content, and if you want to go over to my blog, there will be a full supply supplies list, much more information and pictures over there, so there's a link on screen where you can head over to my blog and check it out. I hope you guys will have an amazing day. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you soon for another card making video.